Well, following last Friday's earthquake, New Zealand Civil Defence staff and management, as well as the Minister, Kiri Allen, deserve a huge congratulations in regards to the alert system across New Zealand. And those three significant earthquakes had those tsunami warnings well planned out around the country. Of course, swells affecting our coastlines. So congratulations, and also to our next guest, who is heavily involved in a lot of the updates, our rural weather, is Phil Duncan. Phil, now you'll be exhausted after a big week, but now coming into autumn, it's definitely here. It's cold in the mornings, but does that mean that summer's completely over? Because it's meant to be to the end of March, is it not?
Yeah, hi Sarah. And yes, I agree with you on what you said about civil defence. We were quite negative about civil defence a decade ago and the way they covered tsunami alerts, and I thought this time they got a 9 point something out of 10 from me. So I thought they did a great job, and the minister as well, as you just mentioned. As for New Zealand's weather, we are in classic autumn setup right now. We've got the windy up and down sort of weather going on. This is the wind map for a couple of days away from now, Wednesday. And what it shows you is a whole lot of westerly winds blowing down here in the Southern Ocean, a lot of windy weather around New Zealand, and it's coming from the west, from left to right. And so that's another classic sign that we're in the middle of autumn. And when we fast forward to next week, again, you see a similar setup. This is 1 week from today, next Monday. And again, more windy sou'westers. The blue line here, that's a sign that colder air in the Southern Ocean is coming up our way. So on one level, we're in classic autumn setup right now, but you asked me if we're going out of summer, and if you go by the astronomical dates, we've still got summer around for another 10, 12 days. So this is the map for March 21st, just a day or so before we get to the equinox, the halfway mark where our days and nights are completely the same length. And what you're seeing here is, March 21, so still a week and a half, 2 weeks away, is all this subtropical air coming down here. 3 areas of low pressure in the tropics. So the tropics get more active as we go into the middle part of the month, and that encourages more humidity. And on top of the northern low pressure systems, you've got these big areas of high pressure further down the country, meaning that places that like Southland that took a long time to get going with summer this year, despite a couple of cooler changes this week, plenty more dry, settled weather on the way. So dry, that could be a bit of an issue for some places.
Fantastic. And for those who are listening along on podcasts, make sure you head to ruralweather.co.nz. If you like graphs, well, you'll be in heaven in terms of Rural Weather's incredible update that we do on Sarah's Country's Newsmaker in our video show as well. So thank you so much, Phil, for all those wonderful graphics. It's incredible. In terms of, you said the dry, what about rain for these dry regions? Any good news ahead?
Not a lot, unfortunately. The setup for the next wee while with westerly winds dominating means that many eastern and northern parts of the country don't get as much rain. So the South Island, for example, Fiordland getting the usual 100 millimetres plus. This is the map for those who are watching, the next 7 days worth of rainfall. And for Fiordland, we're talking about 100 millimetres on the way for the next week. So that's really normal. But then you see the whole eastern side of the South Island has yellow shading, and so does the upper North Island, and that's showing just 5 to 15 millimetres coming in the next week. I think the biggest positive I can take away from the next 7 days of rainfall is what's happening over in the eastern North Island. Hawke's Bay, very, very dry, but hopefully the southerly this week will bring in 40, 45 millimetres of rain, which would be very welcome. And then to take a look at the next 2 weeks, because that we were just talking about 1 week, now we go out for 2 weeks, and what you see is that those areas like Hawke's Bay just have a brief chance of rain. Really, that's it this week, because for the next couple of weeks, the totals don't change. So they're getting that 30 to 50 millimetre, coming up, but then that's it. And areas like Canterbury, North Canterbury, just getting anywhere between 5 and 15 millimetres of rain. That's not much for 2 more weeks, half a month's worth of rain. And the very top of the North Island and very bottom of the North Island equally as dry. So long story short, we're basically going into a pretty dry couple of weeks ahead with some showers this week, But apart from that, not a huge amount of wet weather coming for the next couple of weeks.
And not good with those big winds coming as well, just to really drive home, drying out, and a dry autumn that's looking ahead. So he's hoping going into April there may be some good news. But before that, of course, it's great to be able to get a forecast, very detailed, which you can get at ruralweather.co.nz from your place. And I just selected this myself because for selfish reasons, but there'll be so many people, also thousands, tens of thousands of people in the same situation as me that wants to know what the forecast for this week's Wanaka AMP show. So on my Rural Weather, I've stolen the spotlight to ask Phil myself, but on behalf, of course, of the many that are attending. It's usually always an absolute scorcher every single year. If it's going to rain, it always rains on the Friday, Phil. So how close am I?
Well, you're pretty close. It's raining on the Wednesday. This is the forecast for Wanaka. Friday's looking good. So Saturday and Sunday. So that's a pretty good forecast. Just this little spike of rain, and that's that southerly we were just talking about that arrives in the middle of this week. Temperatures aren't too bad. Goes from 18 to 14 on Wednesday, bounces back up to 20 and then the low 20s as we go into the weekend. So it's not really a scorcher, but it's not cold really either. Looking at the wind, this is quite interesting. On the wind maps, when you click the button at the top here of the page, you'll see these wind graphs pop up. Normally, you see the dark blue line that shows you the average wind direction, but normally you see these shaded blue areas that show where the wind is getting gusty. And there's not one blob of shade on that map, which means, in other words, in this graph, that's the wind, but it's not going to be gusty. The wind gust area means that there's nothing really over 30 k's an hour. Otherwise, it would be showing up on this. And when we look at that rain coming on Wednesday, you can go down to the detailed data further down the page, hour by hour on the Wednesday. It gets a little heavier through the middle of the day, sort of 2 millimetres or 1.5 millimetres an hour. That's not too much, though. So that's really rainfall. And the final map here is taking a closer look at the temperatures. Like I say, fairly mild towards the end of the week, but what I find interesting, because Wanaka being up in the mountains, the green that you see in this map is humidity. So the humidity levels are actually getting right up to the 90% range every night and every morning, which means it'll be a little bit damp on the ground in the mornings. The air will be a little cooler perhaps in the morning, but apart from that, it's looking like a pretty good weekend on the way down there in Wanaka.
Thank you so much, Phil. It certainly is like that. When you go down there at sort of 7 o'clock, the exhibitors have got several layers on, and you have to dress for multiple different seasons in one day at Wanaka. So if you're going to be there, I look forward to seeing you around. I'm really looking forward to being there on the ground. And I just want to say thank you so much to Phil Duncan there for our rural weather this week here on Sarah's Country.